Hi, my name is Ivan Kirgan, and I'm going to be giving a talk that I gave at the Growth Hacker Conference. This way of recording myself talking over slides is actually how I usually practice when I'm giving a talk, so I just thought I'd put it together, throw it on YouTube, and people that didn't make the conference can check it out maybe a bit earlier. I think all the presentations are going to be on Udemy soon, so you should be able to see everyone's talk, including my own, and that was live. But let's dig in. So I'd love feedback generally, so if you can email me at ivan@YesGraph.com, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to be talking about growing a monetized user base, and I'm going to talk about my experience about how I got into growth and what I did at Dropbox to help drive growth, especially referrals, and talk about how some of these lessons learned could be applied via my new startup, YesGraph, so show how I'm applying these ideas there. So I have a background in robotics. I would be adding sensors to bomb disposal robots. But I decided there wouldn't be many new products made in robotics, so I decided to start a company called Tipjoy. It was in YC's winter 2008 batch, and it totally failed. We just failed to match this marketplace problem where it was a social micropayment system, so getting merchants and buyers all together, it was just really hard. And the thing is that this is around the time of startup lessons learned and the lean startup and Facebook's dramatic rise in growth. So it was clear that there was a better way. And so I went to go work at Facebook, and what was really interesting there was the way I was working on credits, and we were trying to grow the credits user base the same way that the normal user base was being grown. And the same was true for advertising, so to get more advertisers. So for example, if you've run an ad on Facebook and you got a newsletter that said, come back and run another ad, you could think about that as a re-engagement mechanism, a lot like getting tagged in a photo. And that's fascinating because the way that these are very different products, so having the same approach that helps grow them is really nice because you can imagine applying these techniques to any product, to any company. And so when I went to go work at Dropbox, it was just natural that I would go work on that, on growth. So let's dig into Dropbox. It's a freemium model, so hopefully this is a bit of review. But if you have a product that costs money, it's a big barrier to getting people to come try your product. And so the idea behind freemium is to have a free tier where people can come and try your product for a while, and then they'll become engaged and learn the value, and then they'll pay you. And this is the way Dropbox works. You start off with a little bit of space, and then you add more space when you pay. And so at the start, you don't need much space because you're not very engaged. And then as you get more and more into it, then you decide, I want more space and I want to subscribe. It's also an interesting relationship between free, paid, and the enterprise, where a lot of companies want more control over the file sharing that's happening in their company, and Dropbox for Teams allows for that. But it's not like the funnel is directly from free, paid, pro. It's actually a lot of free users that help drive that enterprise growth. So I think that's really subtle. A very common mistake in freemium is to put the most engaging features in the paid tier, where if the whole point is casting a wider net, if you're gonna not keep those users around because you don't have some engaging feature on the free tier, that's just missing the point. It's missing an opportunity to keep them around long enough to subscribe. So Dropbox works really well, again, because the free and paid are just the same when it comes to what you could do, and it's just a matter of more or less space. So that works really well. So before we talk about referrals, I wanted to dive into the idea of product. So referrals as a way of helping juice word of mouth growth. You can't really talk about word of mouth without saying that you need like a noteworthy, notably good product. And Dropbox is an amazing product, and so helping drive that with referrals is just natural, and it's just really, really important to have that high quality product. I think that a lot of people, they just skip this part and tack on a referral program, and it doesn't quite make sense. The good news is that Dropbox worked incredibly hard to make the product that it has today. It's just really a lot of work. So it doesn't take some Da Vinci-like designer to come and glean a great product from the ether. They just smoothed out a lot of rough edges. So maybe it was some Swedish version of Windows 98 that had a bug that they fixed, or maybe they made it so that the defaults were just right, needed less configuration out of the box, much simpler onboarding. Details like that matter. And so if you spend a lot of attention on those details, you make an amazing product. So how did the referral system work? It starts out with just a user that they send an invite to someone else, and that someone else signs up and starts using Dropbox, and they both get bonus space. It'd be a quarter gig, and now it's half a gig. They boosted it. And so that you have existing users that invite new users to come on board. That invite might go through email, it might go through somebody's link on a blog post or a comment, it might be something they post on Twitter or Facebook. There are a bunch of different channels. So let's talk about why this works well. First off, by dealing with a bonus space, you're dealing with social norms instead of market norms. So if they got instead like $2 off a subscription or $2 in their pocket, they'd start thinking about the costs in terms of money and market norms for selling out their friends. And you don't want people thinking like that. So keeping it in this virtual currency of space is incredibly valuable. Then you also have the symmetry, the fact that both users get a bonus. And a lot of people talk about this as like an incentive for the other person to sign up. The other person has never used the product. That barely makes sense. And on the margin, it might make sense that they sign up in the higher likelihood because of the bonus. But really, they have an invite in their inbox telling them to go use Dropbox, sent by a friend. That is going to govern whether they sign up for Dropbox so much more or not than whether there's a bonus. But what the symmetry does, it lets the sender feel like they're not spamming their friends. And that's really important because it lowers the threshold for sending. And the ratios here matter. So you get 2 gigs on the free tier, a quarter gig on the paid tier, or on the referral, and then 50 gig for paid. And now if that bonus is too small, then nobody wants it. And so you need to be large enough to motivate it. If it's too small of a ratio from what you have on free to that bonus, it also won't feel like it's a lot. But if it's too large, then the user will get too close to the paid tier and they won't subscribe, so it'll cannibalize your revenue. And so you need to balance this out. I think Dropbox had it really well balanced. Also, the life cycle is important here. If somebody runs out of space and then uses the referral program, they're incredibly motivated to send more referrals. And once they get the space, then they might get more engaged into Dropbox because it's a good amount of space, and they start using more and more, and they might send referrals when they run out again. And that cycle might happen a few times, and then eventually they might subscribe. So the point is that it's not just like right out of the box, a new user sending out viral invites. That kind of invite model is just not the way Dropbox works. And so it's the long-term virality over time that really matters for Dropbox and other referral programs. Generally, when people focus on virality, they should actually probably be focusing on retention because it's the virality over the life cycle that matters the most. And if that life cycle is longer, then you're going to be more viral. So let's talk about how Dropbox boosted referrals, how we helped here. And I think it's important to understand that Dropbox is incredibly conservative when it comes to messaging. So they don't really like sending messages that are low quality. And so I think this, like, where are like the newsletters, the monthly or weekly newsletters from Dropbox? Where is the notification about like new apps on the platform? Where is like shared folder activity from people other than you in your shared folders, telling you what changed? And I think that aspect of it is really important because Dropbox is so conservative, so biased towards high quality messaging, that I think a lot of the things we did to boost referrals were really just about getting the word out, in a way that a company much more aggressive about messaging, they might not have these opportunities for growth. So for example, well, I'll just go through a few examples here. When you have a new user that signs up, they go through a getting started promo, and what this is a tour of the different features of Dropbox, one of them being referrals. So it informs them about that, but there's also like using mobile, using shared folders. But at the end, you get some bonus space. So right at the beginning of a user's life cycle, they get an idea of like getting more space right in that tour right away, which I think helps them understand referrals a bit better. The way you have to organize growth is by triaging the things you can do based upon the expected impact on one side, then the costs, like the engineering, design, and other costs to get it done. And the single best thing Dropbox did to improve referrals, weighted by the engineering cost of it, was to add a PS to a bunch of notification emails. So you get a notification that says some friend signed up and joined your shared folder, and it says, PS, get extra space for free. And that single change just involved the email CMS, like just modifying a bunch of emails. And so it was incredibly easy to do, but had this big boost because there's so frequently, those messages are sent so often, all these transactional emails. Another aspect of Dropbox referrals is with students. So students are great, they're very cheap, and they also love file sharing, and they love using Dropbox, and they're very social. So Dropbox made it so that every student gets double the amount of referral space, and that's awesome. they had this program for students there, and then they doubled down on it with a thing called a Great Space Race after I left. And the thing is that, Dropbox notified everyone with a, @edu email address, which is a huge number of users, and so that's why the net was cast so wide on sending referrals. So I thought students are great, and telling users about referrals is also really great. So talking a bit about Teams, this is a promo on Dropbox.com where you can see on the bottom left there is a little house ad. And what's amazing is if you consider just sales generally, all the lead generation and qualification and ads and all this Salesforce stuff you do, it's like to really drive qualified leads. The fact that so many leads came from this house ad is astounding. And it really highlights how just important it is to have this freemium, because again, it's not free, paid, enterprise. Actually, that free tier casts a very wide net for both getting people to pay you directly and also for getting companies to pay you. Because just because an employee is on the free tier doesn't mean the IT doesn't want to control what they put in their Dropbox and how they share it. So Dropbox is doing incredibly well in the enterprise for this reason, and I think it's why they're going to win in the end. And also, speaking of students, like what happens when you graduate? You go and you get a job, and you don't stop using your tools, you don't stop loving your tools, so they go and get a job and continue to use Dropbox. It works really well. So I don't know many growth hacks, honestly, because so many tactics don't apply between companies. But one thing that I do know is that if you want something done, you can ask, and if you want it done a lot, you can automate it. So what Dropbox did with photos, because photos are really compelling, they're very personal, you care a lot about them, they take up a lot of space along with videos. So what they did is that they made it so when you plug in your phone or SD card or camera into your computer, the Dropbox desktop client starts uploading everything. And that's awesome. They also made it on mobile apps that all your photos and videos you take get uploaded to Dropbox. And this is actually the experience you want. You want it to be so that you take a photo and it's already online. And that's the way it should work, and that's the way Dropbox on mobile works. So really amazing to get a really engaging photo experience, get all your stuff into Dropbox, so you're a very good user, and also it's great for the user because all their stuff is already online. And Dropbox had this amazing BD deal with Samsung to get an out-of-box experience where you sign up for Dropbox. It was just really good because this photo experience in mobile worked really well on Android phones. And so that deal worked out delightfully. One tiny issue, though, was that they wanted to give these Dropbox users on Samsung phones a lot of extra space. But then the problem is they might not really get deep into Dropbox if their only experience is on the phone, like right in the sign-up. And so the solution was to get them to do this tour that I mentioned before, because it would ensure that only the users that are really getting deep into Dropbox would get this bonus space. And the fascinating thing about that, I think, is just this interesting relationship between core product features like these photo features, some astoundingly good BD that the Dropbox team did, and also tiny onboarding features that work really well to get your users deep into a product. I think that relationship worked incredibly well in this case. So let's talk a bit about YesGraph. YesGraph helps you recruit via referral. The idea is that it's really common to say like, hey, do you know anyone good? And off the top of your head, you might name one or two people. But really, it's hard for a recruiting team to rope in their entire team to get all the recommendations of their network. And YesGraph makes that much easier. So we make it so that you describe a job, you invite your team, and then each of those people would connect to Facebook, their email, LinkedIn, and would be able to have all their contacts in one place, sorted according to the job you're trying to fill. And because of these are your contacts, it's really easy to say whether somebody's good or not because you know them. And so it's a really quick stream of yes or no for each of your contacts, which feeds up referrals back up to the chain. And so it's an easy way to scale referral recruiting. When it comes to freemium, this is the core product value of YesGraph is referrals. So we want no barrier to experiencing that. So when somebody signs up, an individual can create a job, send out these invites, and then have those invites send them referrals, and that's all free. It's only when somebody wants to have a team involved that they'll want to rope in the rest of their hiring team or maybe more of their individuals within their company to make recommendations or to invite others to make recommendations. That's when they'll start paying. And so that makes sense because that tier better matches the way companies work. But there's no barrier on the free tier to getting into YesGraph to get to that core product value. Also, the way we differentiate is appropriate because when you have a team of people involved, then everyone on that team can invite others to make recommendations outside the company. Whereas a chain of an individual inviting another, there's not enough affinity along that chain to make that work. So that feature doesn't quite make sense on the free tier and only really works on the paid tier. So there's a nice differentiation there that works really well. At least this is the theory. I mean, the whole point of my bringing this up is this is really early. And I think that, reflecting how I think about freemium and about invites now with YesGraph is very useful if you're just getting started yourself. So how does this get viral? Because there is an invite flow. It's not quite with referral invitations. It's more like a core part of the product, actually, where you sign up, you create a job, you send out invites, then those invites sign up and make referrals. So that invite step is incredibly important. I think there's a social network within companies, and it's often not really acknowledged or addressed. There are different kinds of roles. And so we can steer this invite in the right direction. So not all invites are created equally. If somebody has very high affinity with me, like maybe they're a coworker, then that's going to be more likely to be successful. If somebody knows a lot of people that are appropriate for this job, that's more likely to be successful. If I'm somebody's boss, then they're going to respond to my invite. And so as much as we can steer things, knowing who their contacts are, with the social graph, the better and more effective YesGraph's invites are going to become. How are they actually viral, though? If I invite someone outside my company, then it could be that after I make referrals, I decide to use the product myself because I'm a hiring manager, I'm a recruiter. And that makes a lot of sense, where you have a few friends that are experienced engineers that are all hiring for their teams at different companies, and after they help one another with their referral, they want to go and try the product for themselves. But it might be more subtle than that. It might be that some individual contributor at a company invites another individual contributor, and after they've curated their contacts, then they want to share that list with the hiring team at their own company, in which case the funnel's a bit different. And I think the important thing here is to highlight that we're going to do a lot of experimentation because we're not quite sure which path is going to be taken here. So just building out the features for referrers to create their own jobs or to share lists of people they've referred to others so that others can get deep into YesGraph. That's kind of the experimentation we're going to have to do to really make this work, because we're still trying to figure out exactly the way this invite system works. So normally when I was giving a talk, I'd have questions here, but let me just go back to the beginning with my email address, evan@yesgraph.com. So if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks.